Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Zimmerman and I'm a member of the 20 under 35 cohort. I'm one of the 20 people under 35 who the industry has named as a future leader. We are proud, along with SES, to be a sponsor of this new, special series of the Better Satellite World called Space for All. And now, here's the host of our series, Lou Zaccarilla.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Brittany, and welcome everyone to the Better Satellite World, the podcast of Space and Satellite Professionals International. I'm Lou Zaccarilla. Today we are in the next episode of our new series, Space for All, and today we'll be talking about one woman's journey in the industry and her views. Space for All is sponsored by SES and the 20 under 35 cohort. SES is a satellite and terrestrial telecommunications network provider. It supplies connectivity everywhere to broadcasters, internet service providers, network operators, governments, and institutions. SES says, let us take your story anywhere. The 20 under 35 cohort are 20 young executives under 35 years of age in our industry, who the industry has named the most promising people on the planet. SES is matching their contribution to this series, and we thank them both. The Better Satellite World podcast is also supported by the corporate partners of SSPI, Eutelsat, EchoStar Hughes, Peraton, and Access Intelligence, content with context. Additional support comes from the 3,000 professional members of SSPI and our chapters around the world, including our UK and Isle of Man chapters, hosts of the 2020 Better Satellite World Awards. Hira Muzammil is a senior engineer on the O3B mPOWER system architecture team at SES. That team is responsible for architecture, engineering, and integration for a wide portfolio of products that will be made possible due to the flexibility of SES's next generation of satellites. Prior to working at SES, Hira was a PhD researcher at 5G Innovation Center at the University of Surrey in the UK. Ms. Muzammil has over 10 years of professional experience as an R&D engineer, systems engineer, and in academia. Hira is based in the Luxembourg office, and we welcome her here from there, I believe, today. Hira, welcome to the Better Satellite World.
Thank you very much, Lou. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, it's my pleasure. Was I right? Are you in Luxembourg
Yes,
today?
I am in Luxembourg today.
Very good. Is Luxembourg your home?
I have been living in Luxembourg for 2 years. So I moved to Luxembourg when I joined SES. And before that, I was in UK. I'm originally from Pakistan.
Very good. Well, listen, I really do want to welcome you. And before we really, get into it, I want to start with you. As you mentioned, you've been with SES for about 2 years now. What is your role at SES? In other words, for people listening out there, what do you do every day?
So I joined SES 2 years ago in systems and fleet engineering team. And now I'm part of the O3B mPOWER system architecture team. And as you mentioned in your introduction, that SES is a multi-orbit satellite operator. And we have O3B mPOWER is our next generation MEO constellation, which will bring enormous flexibility and engineering freedom. So this constellation has fully digitized payloads, electronically steered beamforming antenna that can form beam anywhere between plus minus 50-degree latitude, and no limitation on the throughput ratio and latency of 150 milliseconds. So this is like one of a kind satellite system, and it's paired with standardized frameworks that are very famously used in managing telco and ISP networks. I'm part of the system architecture team. So the what and why comes from the product, and how and where is the role of system architecture. So as system architects, we are the driving force of the mPOWER vision. So we create the technical concepts to support the product definition, define the functions of different subsystems, design interfaces, and then add details to abstractions or concept of operations. So it is, our job is just to manage and keep an eye on the overall system, and as to make sure that we are designing the system in such a way that it fully supports the product offering.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, Hira, because I mean this is a big deal, and I'm not just saying that. Because we did a conversation with Stuart Sanders, who I believe you work with before, and we really consider this to be kind of a canvas for the artists in the world who want to do just about anything that you can do or think about doing with a satellite, and that's going to give us, no pun intended, enormous power as an industry. So I'm guessing that your job is going to be actually much more complex than it was, say, 5 years ago, because there are going to be a range of different demands that are going to be coming in, creative demands, right, by enterprises and others that probably have never even existed in the history of our industry. Do I have that about right, or is that an exaggeration?
No, that's absolutely correct, because satellite traditionally was a very traditional industry where things were done in a particular way. But with OpenCM Empower, everything is changing. Like we have almost, we can offer carrier grade Ethernet, and the flexibility that we are now offering with that, the satellite enterprise, is the same as you would get in an internet service provider or a telco network. Mm-hmm. So yes, a lot has changed in that manner.
Yeah, it really has. Well, let's talk about the issue at hand, though, because the topic, of course, with this episode is space for all, and we're talking about larger issues even than satellite fleets, if there is such a thing. SES is considered a diverse company by anybody's standard. I mean, you guys include many different nationalities there. I think it may be the most diverse company in the space and satellite industry. You have a diverse team at Empower, which is based, I think, on 3 continents. Can you just tell me a little bit about the team and how you guys function together in terms of collaboration and the internal social climate?
Yeah, sure. So we are 8 people in the team in 6 locations across 3 continents, as you noted. So we have Jim in Colorado, Rob in Australia, Pierre, Yuri in Loredana in Netherlands, Chris in Florida, Roberto in DC, and myself in Luxembourg. And as we were discussing earlier, that Empower is a great project to work in. But what makes it greater is to work with this epic team. And I'm very passionate about communication technology. And it's amazing to be working with people who share the same vision. And the problem that we are trying to solve are fairly complicated. And we are essentially the first people trying to solve these problems. So the greater the complexity of a system is, the greater collaboration is required to get the best solution. And diversity plays a huge role to get us to the best solution. And you will find it in every corporate research that has ever been done on diversity, that highly diverse teams can help untangle the complexity at a much faster pace. And our team is not only physically diverse, but we are cognitively diverse as well. So each one of us have different expertise, experience, perspective. Everyone has their own way of approaching and thinking about the problem. And when it all comes together, we are able to find creative solutions to very, very complex problems. Yeah. And it's all of us, I like to map my team members to Avenger personalities. Like Jim, for example, is our boss, is like Captain America. Strong values guides the direction of the team. Classic attributes paired with reliability, integrity. And in the problem-solving dimension, he has always a keen eye on what is the right thing to do. Pierre is our Iron Man, like our payload and all-round genius. So his spacecraft expertise help us to fine-tune the deep technical details of customer solutions. And Christian is like Thor. So his ideas are like lightning bulbs. You never know when they're going to come, where they're going to come, but they always come at the right time to solve the problem. And Loredana, the other female engineer in the team, she's our Wonder Woman, like fighting the righteous technical battles, highly competitive, and she'll jump into the action when the things get tough and can resolve everything.
Right.
Rob, he's based in Australia. It's always difficult to find a meeting time for him. But he's not always in the spotlight, but a catalyst to allow all the other superheroes to shine. So he's always precise in his answers and information. Roberto is like to think of him as Doctor Strange, having recently gone through the transfer from Geo to Mia world.
Yeah,
His
that would do it.
concepts are changing, and he's bringing a unique experience to the solution. I think of myself as the Hulk because I tend to bypass the Band-Aid solution and go straight to the root of the problem.
Okay.
And it's kind of in the past 1 year has been very difficult for us to, we work in 6 different locations. When the COVID crisis, everybody was home. And initially we thought, okay, it's going to be very difficult to work on such a complex problem, and then we have this additional complexity or stress of COVID. But what is amazing is that in the past 1 year, we have felt that our team has come more closer and learned to work even more effectively. And we have found that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We have become like example of this now. So I really enjoy working with the team, and I think the problem itself becomes more interesting to solve when you have people who share the same vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, superheroes have to stick together, especially in a pandemic, right? But so the Hulk, is your favorite color green, by the way?
No, not green.
Okay. Well, it was interesting. I was waiting to see who you would be, and it's good to know that our world's greatest engineers are fantasizing themselves as comic book characters. I think that's very healthy. I wanted to ask you though. You said something there that was repeated in another episode. We did an episode with Abbas Maski, who is a Nepalese engineer who worked on the BIRDS project in Japan, won actually an award from us, Better Satellite Worlds Award, went home, was actually treated like a national hero, and was responsible for Nepal, responsible in many ways, I should say, for Nepal launching its first national space agency. I mean, that's the kind of grip our industry has on people's imagination. And he was also referring to the collaboration in that project, which takes place in Japan with nationals from all different parts of the world. Cognitively, you said, the diversity is a very, very important element. Does that mean that culturally, what you are all bringing to projects maybe in some ways gives SES an advantage because you're able to, as I said, to keep with my analogy of the canvas, the painter's canvas, you can refer to so many different colors on the palette.
Indeed, because all of us see the problem in a different way, perceive different information in our own special ways. We have different experience, so we map it to the experience and try to understand it through there. So it kind of helps when it all comes together and we stick together to find a solution. The process becomes very fast and the process becomes very focused.
When you hear the phrase, which is the title of the series, space for all, given the context, that you're operating under, what does that mean to you?
So I've been thinking about the title of this podcast, Space for All. And as a scientist, I draw my inspiration from nature. And you see, on Earth, we have like borders, countries, cities, palaces, cottage, walls, rooms to mark our own space.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at space, on the other hand, it's boundless, holds unlimited opportunities, and in many ways offer us an opportunity for a fresh start. And at the same time, everything is deeply interconnected, and all objects, have relative position. It's truly inspirational and beautiful for me as a scientist, and something that we all can learn a lot from. And I think if we take that inspiration and try to map it to our current context and say, okay, we want to enable space for all, to use space to give equal opportunities to all, we can all achieve more.
Mm-hmm. The vision of unity, right? Which,
Yes.
Again, our industry is kind of unique because we are literally there looking at the unity of things. Sort of again informs this concept. Very good. Now I know getting, I guess, closer to Earth, you have a concern about the lack of women in the engineering and STEM fields, which you suggested, before we went on the air, that it may become worse as a result of the pandemic. You're also a mother of a young daughter, and as I understand it, you are not someone who is exactly a math whiz, in ninth grade, but you turned it around to eventually become a PhD in electrical engineering. Taking all of those things together, is there a point of convergence in your mind about where women should be going, how women should be trained, how the industry should be viewing the talents of women, so that when your daughter gets to the age where she's going to go to work for SES, it's a different experience for her?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to first share the story. I had a 9 out of 100 in ninth grade in a math exam.
You're like me.
And my mom came home and she threw the report card and she's like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with you?" So I spent the summer with a neighbor who had a PhD in maths from Ireland. And after that summer, I never got less than 90 in maths. So I couldn't understand what happened then. But now that I have a daughter and I have been involved in academia, I think, and I try to learn a lot about why women are so underrepresented in STEM. And I think that we somehow have this unconscious bias that kind of leads them there. For my daughter, like being passionate about technology and women inclusion, I have been very careful in choices that I've made for her. I've tried to give her a very neutral environment where she can explore and try different things. But I've still noticed in the past few months that she has decided that somehow boys are better in maths than girls. So although there is nothing in her conscious environment that is leading her to this conclusion, but even unconscious biases have a remarkable effect on leading young girls and women to choose to go to this conclusion. And we need to change that. And at SES, for example, we have been very actively working on diversity inclusion, but just simply having open and honest conversations about what is the problem and what is the goal that we are trying to achieve, and trying to work out solution on how we can improve to do that. And this is not only applicable for women, it's applicable to all minority identifications.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. I mean, and it's probably an episode in it of itself. An unconscious bias. I mean, again, that suggests a lot of things are taking place that the person, your daughter, may not even be aware of. It could be culturally, it could be socially, it could be in the language, it can be in the way she's taught. Where, just very briefly, I mean, where do you begin to look at that? Now, I know as an engineer, you kind of have a solution for more inclusion. I think you call it the rule of space, but just that's a challenging notion, an unconscious bias, because it suggests that there's a lack of awareness at some level. How do you look at that?
I think this root of the problem is very complex to understand because it has relations with several other, as you mentioned, social, psychological, economical factors. But what we can do about this, and this is probably the only way to solve unconscious bias, is by talking about it and by realizing and by reflecting on our own behavior. Are we basing this decision on a bias? And then introducing processes or policies in the system that we can keep a check on ourselves to eliminate unconscious bias as much as possible.
So awareness. I mean, you're fundamentally talking about awareness, which comes from, as you say, expressing something, continuously talking about it, so that it becomes both cognitive and emotional muscle memory, something like that.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, now, as you would expect from an SES engineer, as I mentioned, you have a solution for more inclusion. And again, I don't know if it refers to unconscious bias, but I think you call it, as I said, the rule of space. And as I read your profile, it comes from an interest you have in photography. So, we were very curious to know more about that. Can you can you go there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a very enthusiastic photographer. And in photography, we have a technique called rule of space, which kind of creates the most powerful images. And a few weeks ago, while I was taking pictures in a dark forest in north of Luxembourg, I thought that rule of space somehow uses the empty space to put focus on including the subject. So I'll share 4 aspects of the technique and how I thought we could apply them to be more inclusive. So the first rule of space in photography is movement. We need to think about the direction of the movement of the subject and the space, and give it space in the image for that movement. In a similar way, we need to help women and young professionals identify the direction of their movement in their professional career, and then give them space to move and enable them to move there. The second rule is gaze. So photographers use this rule of space to take advantage of human curiosity. So if you, in an image, you have a person looking it in a certain direction, your eye will be naturally drawn to look in that direction. So you can lead people to see what you want them to see. So highlighting like role models, successful, that can help a future star to relate to them and to rise.
So what you see, you become, so to speak.
I hope I become that one day. The third is perspective. And perspective is like widening our lens, understanding people in their environment and understanding, okay, what is their social background? What is their economical background? What is their geographical background? And somehow incorporating that environment and understanding the person, and see what's in the space around them to get to know or be more inclusive of them. And the fourth is most interesting, which says break the rule of space. You don't have to follow any rules. If you see anything that does not make sense, then challenge it. You don't have to follow it. Like challenge the status quo where it does not make sense, which is the most important rule, because you have to apply and think about the context and then see, okay, if it doesn't make sense to use any of this, then I'll go with my own intuition and use this.
Right. Yeah, that's quite brilliant. And of course, the great photographers, Henri Cartier-Bresson and many others, always talk about, being ready for the right moment. And it seems here like, you have kind of met the moment in terms of your work and career. Last question, talking about that, when you look back as Empower, begins to get traction, what would be the one way that you would want to say, I really did make a contribution to a better satellite world?
With every beam we will land, we will connect someone who is unconnected right now. And it's going to create such a huge socioeconomic impact on the communities, on people who are unconnected right now. Just this impact is very humbling, and it makes it all worth it.
Well, you're going to create a lot of great things going forward, and I couldn't be happier that you came by and talked to us today. Thank you very much, Hira, the Hulk, Muzammil. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Lou. Thank you.
Well, that concludes my conversation with Hira Muzammil of the O3B Empower System Architecture team at SES. That also concludes season 1 of our Space for All series. I'd like to thank everyone who made the time to be with us for these conversations. We're working on season 2, and we'll announce it when it drops. Thanks once again to the 20 under 35 cohort and to SES for their financial support. Thanks too to our corporate members and the members of SSPI and its chapters. SSPI is the voice of the space and satellite professional everywhere. SSPI is the industry's largest international and cross-disciplinary network of people and companies. SSPI is where the people of space and satellite do business, from new hires to seasoned executives in startups on the launch pad and mature companies with billions of dollars in revenues. SSPI connects the people of the invisible, indispensable industry that makes the world better every minute of the day. In March, SSPI will produce its annual Hall of Fame induction program. We look forward to seeing you at our virtual program, starting with a meetup on March 22nd. And to learn more about our Better Satellite World podcasts, please go to bettersatelliteworld.com. If you're not a member of SSPI and would like to know more, go to sspi.org. Student membership is free. And follow us on Twitter at SSPI and check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook. For Space and Satellite Professionals International and our producer Ana Gomez, I'm Lou Zaccarella. Let's make it a better satellite world.